the scenes, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. You guys know those words. But so Vata is the element of movement, quickness, dryness, coldness, roughness, and its seat is in what's called the Apana region, the intestinal region. So this, since Vata controls the movement of things through the body, this Apana controls the downward flow of the food when it comes in. This is an important thing because in many people, if they rush too much and are a little hyper, their Vata gets disturbed, the Apana moves up. Then they get things like belching, hiccups, burping, the food sits there. They call it gastroparesis, it's not moving anywhere. So all these things happen. It's like digestion comes into a gridlock when the Apana moves up. So this is another important area. We have to bring the Apana down. So you could go to the next slide.
Sorry, I was just joining someone. There you go.
Okay, so when I met Dr. Mishra, I remember him saying to me, I love training you, he said, because I studied in India and they never talk about the friendly bacteria. And as soon as I met him, I was talking about the friendly bacteria over and over. And I was telling him that every patient had lack of friendly bacteria because I have ways of testing it that I had learned in chiropractic college. And he just loved that. And he said, this is so great. My father always talked about them. And he called them little yoginis because they have this major impact on your health. And in this modern era, if you've ever taken any of these medications, antibiotics, birth control pills, immunizations, steroids, proton pump inhibitors, the acid reflux medicines, chemotherapy, flu shots, they wipe out the strains. And when I first opened my practice and I had studied Ayurveda, I thought this would be nice. I would every day balance Vata, Pitta, Kapha in the patients and teach them how to remove Ama because that's what I had learned when I was studying Ayurveda. And when I opened my doors, it wasn't anything like they said it would be. And this is where Dr. Mishra came in handy because they hadn't talked about what do you do when some girl has been on birth control pills for 10 years and it's totally wiped out her friendly bacteria and her gallbladder has stones in it because the hormones are they're made of cholesterol and it's super saturating the bile. Or you get people who have repeated flu shots. Just one flu shot just wipes out the strains of the friendly bacteria and all the mercury goes into the bone marrow and it upsets the whole immune system. And then we see people, I see kids, they took antibiotics for 3 years for acne and their whole immune system is just totally wiped out because the liver's overheated from the chemicals and it's pushing them into autoimmune. The friendly bacteria are missing. So this is what I see in my practice every day. And I think most people in any country at this point would be seeing this. So the very first step on every new patient, unless they had a brilliant mother who never gave them antibiotics, somehow knew not to give 73 shots to the babies, the mother never took birth control, but somehow if they were immune and never took these things, they're in pretty good shape. But it's rare for people in the United States to have good friendly bacteria. I do see people in other countries, they have much better friendly bacteria cultures than we do because here, at least in the United States, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but we are so overly medicated from all these pharmaceuticals. We pop pills for everything, not understanding the consequences of these things. I'm not anti-vax, I'm not anti-medicine. I don't have all these conspiracy theories that this doctor or that one is out to get us. But I have to say that we are making ourselves very sick from just losing our friendly bacteria. So let's go to the next slide. Just about every patient I see, the friendly bacteria are depleted. There's an overgrowth of yeast in the gut. As the yeast migrates out of the gut, it forms little perforations called leaky gut, and it goes on from there. Food allergies. See, the friendly bacteria train the immune system not to go autoimmune. Your immune system has intelligence and it knows I attack viruses, I attack bacteria, I do not attack gluten and dairy or other foods, and I do not attack pollen and all those antigens in dog fur, and I also do not attack you, the host. That's autoimmune. 2/3 of my practice at any point in time have autoimmune diseases, from young kids to teenagers to the little ones we're seeing now who had the 73 shots. But I don't see it as much in the older population because they weren't raised on as many pharmaceuticals as we are now. But it's getting worse with each generation because the children that are born already got the toxins from their mother, whatever she got in her life. So we're seeing this first generation, someone in their 90s is very healthy. See, and then we're seeing the next generation down. They didn't fare as well. They started microwaving the food, freezing it, having leftovers and takeout. They didn't do as well. They might live to be 75. And then the next generation down, they're starting to have all these food allergies. But then the young kids we're seeing are totally so sick with autism, ADD, ADHD, PDD, NOS, goes on and on. I never see a normal kid anymore because they got their mother's toxins. And one thing Dr. Mishra taught me was that when a baby's born, they accumulated all the toxins that their mother had, which is okay, because in the early years, you get measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox. And that's how you get rid of the toxins. They come through the skin. But what's happening because of all the shots, they're not getting those diseases. So now they're holding on to those toxins, and they're getting more toxins from the dozens of shots they're getting, not to mention all the antibiotics and the bad food. So anyway, the friendly bacteria is the first step we take in all the children. It's very important that children develop those friendly bacteria in the early childhood years. They're not having a chance to do it because just one immunization wipes out the strains, which would be okay. Then you can go back and replenish the strains, but it's not happening. The doctors don't know that the shots are doing that, so the kids are left on their own then. And then as the friendly bacteria die and they never develop, you'll see the child developing food allergies, the immune system's getting more and more reactive, they get more allergic to everything. Then they start, as they get older, getting things which we never heard of when I first opened my practice. We never heard of fibromyalgia. It's so common now. I was told I would see one case of autism in my whole lifetime. It was so rare when I opened my practice. But in 1989, after the vaccine schedule went from just maybe 10 shots, which was okay, to 73, then everything broke loose. The kids came in with all these problems. Anyway, so Dr. Mishra and I had to sit and figure out, what do you do in this modern era with all this going on about us, with all these chemical toxins? So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to regrow the friendly bacteria back in the gut. The problem was this: all the yogurt that you're buying, even at Whole Foods, if you look at it under a microscope, the cultures are dead. There's just enough culture there to make yogurt, but not enough to replenish your friendly bacteria. I spent 2 days with a very expensive microscope. I looked at every company that made the probiotic cultures. The cultures were dead in every company. I only could find one that had live cultures. And when I contacted the company, I wrote about this in my book. It's a company called Natron. They said it's very hard to process a probiotic, but they figured out how to do it. They have very strict standards for their business. And they took a very, very good cultures from Russia. So I started using that in my practice. And when Vijay Mishra would come, we would check out different yogurts and try different yogurt starter cultures, because the ancient doctor said the yogurt shouldn't taste sour. If it's sour, you're going to kill the friendly bacteria. That's how delicate they are. So we kept trying things and trying different yogurts from Whole Foods Market, and none of them met his approval. And then I showed him the yogurt starter from Natron. And we made yogurt, and he said, that's the way yogurt should be made. That's what the ancient doctors were talking about. So you could, if you want to make it easy, you could take the Natron probiotics, or you could make your own yogurt with the Natron yogurt starter, or you could learn how to make takra buttermilk. They're a little complicated, but it's better to make your own and lassi rather than buying it, because the cultures won't be so great. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Now, just about every new patient I see, there's 3 things we have to do with the liver. The first thing is that most of us were raised on vegetable oils. It's changing a lot now, but my generation and a few after me were raised on corn oil, margarine, Then in the 1970s, we got into safflower oil, sunflower oil. Then we got into canola oil. And to this day, we have Whole Foods Market, it's called, in the United States. They cook all their foods with canola oil. So, and when you eat out, they're all using vegetable oils because they're cheaper to use. Sometimes they'll say they have olive oil, but it's really a blend of vegetable oils. I'm mentioning this because when you heat vegetable oils, they form a poison that damages the liver. Almost every new patient I see has liver damage. It's just that it hasn't been diagnosed yet. It takes about 6 stages of a disease process to be diagnosed with the disease. So I'm seeing the very early stages of a fatty liver, although many have already been diagnosed with fatty liver. And one of my favorite things to do is to use the herb, I'm going to show you a little later, that regenerates the liver cells and the fatty liver goes away, because the liver is very good at regenerating itself. But the first step is, any patient you see, you have to ask them what kind of oil they're using, and you have to get them off the vegetable oils. When you heat them, they also form a plastic that clogs the arteries. This is what's clogging the arteries, these vegetable oils. It's not cholesterol like ghee. I see a lot of people from India, they're strict vegetarians, and they all have stents put in. Their arteries are so clogged. And I keep thinking it can't be, because if you're having fruits, vegetables, grains, and lentils, there's no way you can clog your arteries. And I was just wondering and wondering until it occurred to me, after so many years of seeing this, ask them what kind of oils they're using, and they're all using vegetable oils. Mustard seed oil, groundnut oil, or peanut oil. They're using sunflower oil, and a lot of them use canola oil. And they love to deep fry. So they're really heating the oil. But even if you don't deep fry, just cooking a little bit, these oils, they're going to hurt your liver. So I love taking those patients and fixing their liver. Now, also the liver gets corrupted from the pharmaceuticals, of course, and nutraceuticals. So I've seen lots of Facebook posts. People are using high doses of vitamin C for the coronavirus. They're using high doses of vitamin D and vitamin A, and that's their cure for the virus from a holistic standpoint. So this was one of the many reasons I wrote my book, that in the Western world, since we're fairly new countries, especially here in the States, and we don't have a tradition of holistic medicine like they do in India, and we don't know all of our herbs, we tend to resort to the use of these. We could call them nutraceuticals. So here's what has happened. Pharmaceuticals are where they said, you know, herbs have these active ingredients in them. Why don't we isolate them, take them out of context with nature, no prana. Prana is the vibration from the sun and the moon hitting the herbs, the food, gets imparted into the herbs and food. And when we take that herbs and food and the water, that prana gives our cells their intelligence to perform all their functions. So anything made in a lab will be devoid of the prana. So that's what pharmaceuticals are. So it's not to say they don't have an effect, they do, and thank God we have them all, but we have to be real careful how we use them. So every time you take one, it helps things, but it also is toxic to the liver and kidneys, and it will have side effects because there's no prana there. They synthetically made it at a much higher dose in a lab. So we had these holistic people come along saying, we're not going to do that. We don't like pharmaceuticals. They have side effects and they're toxic to the liver. But let's see, we don't know our herbs, but what we could do, food has these vitamins in it, like vitamin A and C. Why don't we make them at a real high dose in a lab? Like instead of, I don't know, an orange has like 18 units of vitamin C. Let's make like 1,000 or 2,000. See the mistake they made? These are the same as the pharmaceuticals. It's the same approach. But this is what we consider holistic medicine. I just got another email today from a guy. He said, my brother's an acupuncturist, and here's what he's telling me to make. Now, mind you, or to take for the virus, because it's very bad where we are right now. And he sent me a list. 20,000 units of vitamin A, 60,000 units of vitamin C. You can get injections with it. You know, it was like all these high doses of vitamin D, all these vitamins. And his wife, I've been treating her for autoimmune. I said, if you take these, the liver's going to overheat. It's going to push your wife into more autoimmune, see? But that's our approach here in the West. That's why so many people I see, the liver's corrupted from all these vitamins they're taking. So you don't want to take that approach. Processed foods, we all know about that, and deep fried foods. You could go to the next slide then. Now, just quickly, for the liver, you only want good quality olive oil. So you have to search for it a little bit because some of it has some vegetable oils blended into it, the cheaper ones. So you have to spend good money on good olive oil, but it's worth it because just like those friendly bacteria in the gut, the liver also is the foundation of your health. I remember turning to Vijay Mishra one day and I said, I think if we just fix the patient's friendly bacteria and the liver, we could probably treat any disease. He said, yeah, I think so. Because if you trace every disease back, it goes back to the liver and the friendly bacteria. So you could have ghee. There's two ways to make ghee. One is cultured, one isn't. You can read more about that in my book, or you could Google how to make it. It's hard for me to teach you everything in this one PowerPoint, but whatever ghee you get or make sure the cows are grass-fed, because when they're eating grass, then the ghee has all the nutrients from the grass. You don't want them eating grains. You could also have sesame oil, but a big problem I see is that in Ayurveda, they classify the oils a little differently. Like they start with coconut oil. So coconut oil is very cold and waxy. See how solid it is at room temperature? So we don't want that unless you live in a very hot climate like southern India or close to the equator. We don't have enough Agni or digestive fire to digest coconut oil, but everyone's saying how good it is because here in the West, we're just looking at the nutritional value of the food. But in Ayurveda, they look at what happens when it comes in. So coconut oil is too cold. It's going to douse the digestive fire. We don't want that. But then we have ghee. See, ghee is cooling, but it's very easy to digest. Coconut oil is getting all the publicity because we don't know about ghee in this country. But if we knew more about it, it would be getting a lot more publicity than it is. So ghee is one of those perfect, wonderful foods that makes ojas quick. In fact, in the ancient text, they said ojas looks a lot like ghee, see. Sesame oil is good. So here we have ghee, and then we have olive oil. It's a little warmer. Sesame oil is even warmer. Then over here we have fish oil. In my book, I have a whole section why we shouldn't take fish oil pearls. You don't want that. It's pretty inflammatory, could be rancid. There's a lot of problems associated with it. You can eat the fish, but you don't want to take pearls of fish oil and torture your gallbladder. And then at the very end of the spectrum is flax seeds. So in Ayurveda, they said, don't go near flax seeds, don't eat them, don't have flax oil. But here in the West, we look at the nutritional value only, and they say, oh, have flax seeds in your food because it has omega-3s. See? So just stick with these fats. You can make it easy on yourself. Olive oil, ghee, and sesame oil. Avoid processed foods. And the herbs for the liver, these are the three I use every day on almost every patient in my practice. Bhumi amla, it's not the amla berry, it just looks like it. A lot of people think it's the amla berry, it's not. But it cools down the heat in the liver and it brings the intelligence back to the liver so it stops attacking all those foods that you think you're allergic to. You're not. It's just the liver going into the attack mode. So this settles it down. Mankhand, I have a section in the book on that. This is a very rare herb that Dr. Mishra could never find, but someone he knew was dying of liver failure. So in the hospital, and he was in a coma, and they pushed him, and they finally found the herb, and it brought him out of his liver failure. They took him off he was supposed to get a liver transplant. His liver was fine after that. And so I use Mankhand in almost every new patient if their diet has been poor, and especially if there was a history of vegetable oils. Guduchi, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. It's funny, when the virus just came out, everyone in America was hoarding toilet paper. And I have this big Facebook friends post from India, a lot of the Ayurvedic doctors. They said, it's funny, you guys are all hoarding toilet paper, we're hoarding Guduchi. Because Guduchi has effects directly on the immune system, which I'll talk about a little later. So right now I have all my patients on Guduchi to protect them from the virus. You could go to the next slide. But I can guarantee you, if you eat those good oils and ghee, You take those herbs for a while, you'll have a whole new liver in just a few years. It takes a while to reverse it depending on how poorly you ate, but the liver's very good at rejuvenating itself. And all those food allergies and digestive problems go away. The gallbladder, I remember writing this chapter and I was actually like almost shaking with excitement to think that people in the whole world now would know what I have been seeing in my practice with the gallbladder. Nobody ever talks about it. And it's this huge problem. So what happens is when the gallbladder is like the size of a little pear, and in between meals, the liver drips bile into it. So at the time of the meal, it's filled up with bile and it squirts it. Then it becomes like a deflated balloon, and then it fills up again in between meals, and then at the next meal it squirts it. So by the end of the day, you've squirted a quart of bile. We're not talking a little bit, we're talking a quart. Now what happens is the bile always has to squirt like a liquid. But what I wrote in my book on the thyroid gland, when the thyroid's weak, which it is in so many people, even if it's not been diagnosed, the gallbladder automatically won't work well. Many of you right now are going, I know I had gallbladder problems and I have thyroid problems at the same time. Or, oh, I had my gallbladder removed and I have a hypothyroid. Or, oh, I have Hashimoto's and I'm always belching. See? So there's this relationship that when the thyroid's weak, the gallbladder won't squirt the bile. So then it sits there and it turns into a sludge. A sludge means it gets thicker and thicker, like instead of being a liquid, becomes like a toothpaste. So other things could do that too. Just think of it. All the fats that you eat have to go into the bile to be processed. So what you don't want to do is drink ice cold beverages. Why? Think of chicken soup. When you put it in the refrigerator, the fats get hard. So if you're drinking ice water, the ancient doctors said it would depress your Agni. People in America and the West don't know those words, Agni, but you can understand this if you think of it like a sludge. Your bile is going to get real thick and it's going to become like a toothpaste. And if you let it sit too long, it develops gallstones from the cholesterol that's not being processed. Plus, your cholesterol is going to go up, see? So what's the mistake the doctors make? They give cholesterol lowering medications when they should be looking at the gallbladder. But that's another side point. But we have to, there's ways to flush the bile and thin it out. There's foods that do it, and then there's herbs. You could go to the next slide. So you want to keep your diet just like those ancient doctors said, warm cooked food. You don't want to be having frozen yogurt and ice cream and ice cold water and cold lemonade, unless it's maybe very hot in the summer, you want a cool drink. But you don't, especially in the winter and colder months, you want warm cooked food. When you eat the food, you have to cook it on the inside anyway. You might as well cook it on the outside. See what I'm saying? And it gives your digestion a break. So you want smaller lentils, not the real large beans, freshly made curd cheeses like cottage cheese, regatta cheese, paneer, but not the hard aged cheeses. They're just going to clog the channels. You want to boil the milk. You want good olive oil, good ghee, cooked vegetables. You could go to the next slide. Now, when you're eating, make sure you're sitting and not standing. Look at your food. Don't read your phone because your brain has to be able to see what's going in, and it sends messages to the gut to digest the food. Keep the apana moving downward by try to be balanced. Don't rush through the day. Just try to be on an even keel. But rushing all day long will push the apana up, and then the digestion won't work. Make sure you chew your food well. Don't drink cold beverages. It puts out the digestive fire. And avoid all these frozen canned microwavable foods. You could go to the next slide. So these are the herbs that we use to keep the bile thinned out. Triphala, haritaki, also cooked beets. Of all the foods, beets help to keep the bile thin. Sip hot water all day and avoid cold foods and beverages. By sipping the hot water, it's going to keep the bile nice and thin. And above all else, avoid birth control pills. Whenever I get a young girl on birth control pills, I have been known to get on my hands and knees to get them off, because we don't have time to talk about it now, but They're probably the #1 leading cause of breast cancer because of the type of hormones. There's no prana in those hormones, no intelligence. So the estrogen is going to create an unintelligent growth in the body, otherwise known as a breast cancer. And they do other things. They hurt the liver, they destroy the friendly bacteria, goes on and on. So the girls that I see who never took them are so much healthier than those that did. Okay, you can go to the next. But birth control pills will make the bile very thick. Oh wait, yep, yeah. Keep. You're going the opposite way.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. The next one. Okay. Now these are the things that deplete ojas. Don't go to bed past 10. Don't over exercise. You can exercise, but you have to give yourself some breaks. Some days don't push too hard. Don't rush all day. Avoid too much sexual activity, and you have to have some animal protein in the diet. You don't want to just eat fruits, vegetables, grains, and lentils. The ancient doctors of India who were strict vegetarians said you need animal protein at just about every meal. So in a vegetarian diet, that animal protein is going to come from milk. In this modern era, I see so many people who are allergic to milk now because of these issues with the gut, the liver. So I show them ways to slowly fix their digestion and come back to the milk. So this is a big problem I see in my practice. When someone wants to be vegetarian and they're not having milk or paneer, their ojas goes real low. All the 7 tissues are very weak. So because they're all made out of animal protein. So, okay, you could go to the next slide. Now, these are the physical channels or the shrotas. Okay. So when you swallow food, it goes into the first channel. You could go to the next slide. The first channel is the digestive tract. It's like a long tube. Then from there, it absorbs in the bloodstream, and it goes through those channels. And then it becomes things like urine, tears, sweat, toxins. And all these two are traveling through thousands of little channels in the body until they come out the other end, through channels into the bowel movement, urine, and the sweat. So we have to also think in terms of these channels. 3 basic things could happen to them. They could shrink, get clogged, or inflamed. You could go to the next slide. These are the foods which shrink the channels. They contain nicotine, and nicotine just shrinks them down. You could feel it in a person's pulse. If they eat some potatoes, you just feel it go down like that. Eggplant, bell peppers, tomatoes, and white potatoes. These are the nightshade vegetables. These weren't around when the ancient texts of Ayurveda were written. They were brought in the 1600s to India, and now everybody eats them, but that's not considered a Vedic diet when these are in there. You could go to the next slide. The foods that clog the channels: nut butters, peanut butter, almond butter, red meats, hard cheeses. Of all the fruits, just avoid bananas. All they do is clog. The larger beans, kidney beans, black beans, chickpeas, hummus. That's why there's this emphasis towards the smaller dals. Mushrooms, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and pumpkin seeds. A lot of people are eating them. They might have omega-3s, but they're channel clogging at the same time. Also cold dairy, chocolate. I see a lot of advertisements for cacao. Everybody's eating it, has all these antioxidants, and it's clogging the channels. Also unfermented soy, like tofu, edamame, and soy milk. And the winter squashes like eggcorn, butternut, pumpkin. You can have, if a recipe calls for them, just use sweet potatoes. They don't clog the channels. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Then you want to avoid foods that burn the channels: onions, garlic, and vinegar. See, a lot of people are saying, if you get the virus, and I would have to agree, eat a lot of onions and garlic because it works like an antibiotic. It kills. But the long-term use of that in the diet will kill those friendly bacteria, see? So we don't want to have them on a daily basis. Also vinegar, it's too sour. Instead of vinegar, put fresh squeezed lime on your food. It turns alkaline right away. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Oh, you could go to the next. We had already kind of talked about that. Now we get to the treatments. So here what I was just presenting were ways to keep your channels open. If they get clogged or shrunken, you're asking for infection to breed. So that's pretty easy to follow. And also we're trying to fix digestion and eat foods that are lighter and absorb in the cells to keep your production of ojas up. But if you did get the virus, this is what you would do. You could go to the next slide. Keep the immune system strong. Everybody talks about the immune system. What is the immune system? The liver, the friendly bacteria, but also the bone marrow. And the bone marrow is where the immune system cells are born. So this is a very important tissue. We could feel it. It's called Maja Datu. And you can feel that in a person's pulse. You could go to the next slide. So with the liver, again, you can eat organic, fresh foods, keep the liver clean. We have lots of herbs that I mentioned, and there's even more than I mentioned. Bitter melon, Karela is good for the liver. Loki squash is good for the liver. You could go to the next slide. And again, nourish the friendly bacteria with these nice alkaline sources of probiotics, whether it's buttermilk, takra, yogurt, lassi, but you want to avoid kombucha. See how sour that is? Dr. Mishra wrote a really wonderful article, if you can try to get it out of his archives, on why he thought kombucha was so dangerous. And some of our patients didn't fare too well on that because it's so sour. It's killing all the friendly bacteria. Kefir and that real sour yogurt. I see patients who make kefir, and when they come in, their friendly bacteria is depleted still. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Now, the bone marrow. Guduchi cleans the bone marrow. That's why everyone in India is scouring all of India to get the Guduchi, because that's where a big part of the immune system resides. But in this modern era, it's good to know that the leaf of the Guduchi is a little too heating for the liver. You know how I was saying the liver's overheated. But the stem of the Guduchi, it's also known as Guduchi Sattva. So Guduchi stem, different people sell it. We carry it in our office. Chandika carries it, others. So the stem of the plant is very starchy, and they make a juice out of it, and then they make like a powder out of that. So when it comes in, it pulls all those old toxins that the liver's been harboring and the bone marrow, and it takes them out so the immune system can normalize. You could also eat moringa leaves. They're just a little hard to find. Although we do have a dried version that we give our patients. It's like a moringa leaf soup mix, we call it. They put it in their dal. And drumstick is the pod of the moringa tree. So here what I'm saying is, to treat the bone marrow, the best herb to treat it is Guduchi, and the best food is moringa from the Moringa oleifera tree. You could either eat the leaves or the actual drumstick. So, and you could Google recipes for those. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Now, you could take turmeric, and like a half teaspoon of turmeric, half teaspoon of salt, and put it in a cup of warm water. They said one of the first signs you'll get of a virus is a sore throat. So keep gargling with that every couple hours. The turmeric and the salt will kill the infection so it doesn't get into the whole body. Also, if you do get sick, and this is true for pneumonia, bronchitis, colds, flus, or this virus, melt some ghee, like a tablespoon of ghee, and put about a teaspoon of turmeric in there, and just cook it on a low heat for about a minute. The turmeric cooked into the ghee delivers it into the cells. So turmeric needs a little vehicle to bring it in the cells, and the vehicle is fat. So you could put it in milk and simmer it there, or in ghee. So I have our patients just melt the ghee, put turmeric in, and pour that onto your food at lunch and dinner, just when you have a cold or a flu, not all the time, because turmeric's pretty heating. So just during that week or two, you would eat extra in the diet. That's different than just taking like turmeric and sprinkling it on the food. See, it needs that vehicle to get in. Also, turmeric comes raw. They have it, I've seen it at our health food stores and co-ops here in America. You don't want to get it raw. It has to be dried and ground into a powder. And just be careful at the Indian market. Sometimes it's a white chalk with a yellow dye sprayed on it. Now, you can also use goat's milk. See, if you're congested or sick and you have like a bronchitis or pneumonia or a head cold, we always tell you, don't have any dairy products. Don't have paneer, don't have milk. But it's not true with goat's milk, because goat's milk takes away congestion. Not only that, it heals the gut. So many people need that, and it heals the lungs. So this would be a good thing for this type of virus to prevent infection in the lungs. But simmer the goat's milk for 2 minutes with cardamom. Cardamom helps you digest the protein in the milk, and a cinnamon stick helps you digest the sugar in the milk. And then put a couple pinches of turmeric. Let it simmer a couple minutes, strain it, and then drink that on an empty stomach. And you know those 7 tissues I was talking about? Whatever food you eat today, it spends 3 to 5 days in each of the tissues, so that the 7th tissue won't be nourished. Whatever food you eat today won't nourish the 7th tissue until about a month from now. And then you make ojas. The only exception to that is milk. So we're living at a time where the knowledge of nutrition, I would say, is pretty opposite. So people come to me, they're telling me they're taking turmeric capsules. I tell them, don't do that. And they're doing this cleanse with maple syrup and cayenne pepper. I tell them, don't do that. And they all tell me, I know milk's a poison. We don't have any milk in the diet, but we have rice milk, almond milk. We go out of our way not to have animal milk. And the opposite's true. If you can take goat's milk or cow's milk, when you boil it with those spices, it absorbs in the cells immediately, and you make ojas immediately from it. So this is the #1 most important food in the diet. It's just that no one knows it. Everyone's avoiding it to the point where here in the States, the whole dairy industry is going down the tubes. But again, if you're sick, you would use goat's milk. And then the cow's milk, you can use, if you're not allergic to it. Now, most people we see, they're not truly allergic to it. It's just that their digestion's so off, they can't digest it. So I work very hard with them to get them to the point where they can either have goat's milk or cow's milk, because if they can have that, the 7 tissues are so well nourished and they have radiant health versus those who aren't having any milk and they're always lagging behind with their energy because they're not able to make ojas. See what I'm saying? Okay, you could go to the next slide. So here's some good antiviral herbs. Of course, Tulsi. We use a formula that has 3 species of Tulsi. When the coronavirus came out, I was reading that there's something called harsingar flowers. They said it's a cure for the coronavirus. I don't know if that's true. Everyone's making claims. But the Tulsi tea that Vijay left us with, I looked and there were harsingar flowers. And for a minute I missed him and I thought, how did he know we were going to have this epidemic? But there he was thinking about us and he put harsingar flowers in it. Guduchi, of course. Neem is a good antiviral. Greater galangal, it's like ginger. Elderberry is what they use here in the West. That's good. Any of the berries, amla berry, echinacea, and licorice. You could go to the next slide. And you could make like a ginger root tea. Just boil some ginger root and for about 15 minutes. You can make it as spicy or as little spicy as you want. And strain it and put some fresh lime and mint in it. That's good. You could also make teas with these different warming spices, pepper, cloves, and lots of different companies have teas like this, that you can buy. And again, the Tulsi tea with the harsingar flowers. You could go to the next slide. Now, during the swine flu epidemic, Vijay Mishra made this, it's called Vedanga oil, where he said that you put a few drops in each nostril, because when you breathe it in, the virus comes in through the nostrils, and this would kill the virus. These are all the ingredients that are in there. So we've been giving that to our patients. But I don't, if you're not used to his line, you could go to the next slide. You could probably use any of the Nasya oils that are out there. All the companies make them with some herbs and warming spices. Okay, you could go to the next slide. And see, everyone in America is taking vitamin C, which again, you can do it, but it's going to have side effects. It makes the system acidic because it's ascorbic acid. You run the risk of getting kidney stones and other things. But in Ayurveda, we use amla berry. It has 20 times more vitamin C than an orange. But when you take it in, it turns alkaline right away. One of the many things you have to be throughout your life, your blood has to be alkaline. So people are taking all this vitamin C and they're making themselves acidic. And again, the inside of the cell, if it gets hot, it's going to trend you towards autoimmune diseases and cancer. We also use Chive Prash. It's a formula with about 50 herbs. Many of you are familiar with it, where they cook the herbs into amla berry. So a lot of our patients are taking that. You could go to the next slide. We're almost done. The other thing, a lot of people are saying you should steam the sinuses because this virus can't handle heat and humidity. You could do it any way you want. The way we do it, we boil a pot of water and we put these herbs, they're in a packet, neem, frankincense, pushkarmal, Himalayan salt, and we put some essential oils like eucalyptus in there. We put a towel over our head and you breathe in the vapors, and these help to kill the infection along with the steam. So you could do that a couple times a day. You could go to the next slide. I'm not sure if that's the last slide. Oh, then there's also Sitopalati powder. That's also a famous Ayurvedic treatment for coughs and colds. Take a teaspoon and mix it. If you can get Talis Patrati powder, they're just like hot, spicy spices, and you mix it in raw honey and take it after breakfast and dinner, and that also helps a cough. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Oh, zinc. So lots of people are taking zinc, that's okay, but the ancient doctors who were a little more advanced than us, even though they didn't have microscopes, but they were always correct. They said that zinc is a big molecule, can't just get in the cell. So you have to burn it repeatedly into an ash. And each time you burn it, the molecule gets smaller and smaller. And after doing that so many times, the molecule becomes what's called a nanoparticle. Nanoparticles can absorb easily in the cells. So we use these, they're called basmas. We use basmas, whether it's silica or calcium, irons like that, but here we're using zinc, and zinc is known as Yasad basma in Ayurveda. So we have our patients put little zinc drops in water and drink it throughout the day. What it does, it binds directly to the viruses and it prevents them from entering the cells. It also prevents the viruses from replicating, prevents pneumonia. And our bodies don't make zinc on their own. You have to eat it in these different types of foods. But sometimes, again, when you have an infection, it's good to take outside zinc just for a little more. So, and a lot of people are saying that with this new virus, people are dying from what's called a cytokine storm. It's where the immune system attacks so hard, there's so much inflammation that the inflammation is killing the lungs and the patient. So they're trying to figure out ways to tamp down the cytokine storm. One way I could tell you would probably do it is the Guducci, because it keeps the immune system intelligent so it doesn't hyperreact. The other thing would be zinc. It prevents the inflammatory substances called cytokines from being produced. One other side note is that people who get the flu shot, I wish we could do a study and see how many of them are getting this virus, because the flu shots are damaging all parts of the immune system. 4 parts. As soon as you get one, it wipes out the friendly bacteria strains. It hurts the liver. There's a lot of chemicals in there, go through the liver, heat it up. And the mercury in there goes directly, the mercury and the other chemicals go right into the bone marrow and disrupt its function. And the latest article I read, because I read research all the time, because I know in this modern era, people want to hear about research. And they think of Ayurveda as this kind of ancient thing that they do in India, but it's not relevant in this modern age where we have research. So one of the things, if you look at my book, I have 100 pages of a 300-page book just on the research behind us, because all this has been researched. It's just that people act like it hasn't. But the latest research I read on the flu shot said that it depresses the T cells, and it's the T cells that are looking for viruses on the outside of the cell. So my thinking is that the people I see who get flu shots every year, they get very sick when they get a virus. See, and I'm thinking that those people who are getting sick might have had some flu shots in their life, but I'd like to see research on that. You could go to the next slide. We're winding our way down now, so I know. See, I told you I would go over my time. The herbs that The herbs that strengthen the lungs. This is a formula, Augustia Rasayana. Rasayana means rejuvenator. This one rejuvenates the lungs. You could get it off of Amazon. These are the herbs I use every day in my practice. So today I had 2 people get the coronavirus, and I put them on these herbs. Devil's apple. Barangi heals the lung tissue. Devil's apple stops that inflammatory response in the lungs. Kantakari is just like albuterol. It's a bronchodilator, just like it, but it heals the lungs. Pushkarmul, Vasa is used a lot for asthma. Boswellia works exactly like prednisone without the side effects. And then, of course, Tulsi, which prevents lung infections. So we have a lot of tools to fight this virus. Also, Shringbasma, which is the velvet from the deer antler. They don't have to kill the deer to make it. When the antlers fall off, they use it. But this Shringbasma, the ingredients in this deer antler are glucosamine chondroitin. You hear people taking that for their joints. That's the synthetic version you're seeing in the pharmacies. But this was the real thing that they've always used in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, the antlers to the deer. And they not only help the lungs, but they help women like keep their levels of estrogen up. So, and they also help to heal the joints. So Shringbasma can be used for many things. It's like a wonderful thing. And I think, was that the last one? Is there one more? Oh, also, don't forget the sunlight hitting the skin. It does many things. One thing, it helps you produce vitamin D, which is good for immunity, but it also energizes the T cells to fight infection. You want your T cells to be very active because they're the ones, again, that kill the viruses. They're the ones that get suppressed when you get a flu shot. And the skin has twice the number of T cells than are in your bloodstream. And T cells, again, are needed to attack the viruses. Also, the heat from the sunshine can, they say, can kill the coronavirus. And I just will end this on a note. Dr. Mishra turned to me one day and said, the sunlight hitting the skin does many things more than making vitamin D, but we haven't discovered it yet. And as time goes on, I could see all this new research coming in. He was absolutely right about that. So that's why you'll feel a lot better when you're able to soak up the sun again. And I think, was that the last one? Yeah, okay. So do we have time for questions or?
We do. There's a couple that were asked during the, hang on a minute, let me quit sharing this. There you are. There was a couple of questions asked while you were speaking. And one of them was the Guduchi, the Brumi Amala, can you take it every day? People wanted to know, and how much?
It depends the form that you're taking. So, you know, we use these little drops. You could take a few drops every day. If you get the Guduchi powder, you could take a 1/4 teaspoon in a 1/4 cup of water. You stir it, and you take it after each meal, 3 times a day.
And when someone was asking, they don't have a gallbladder. So do you have any suggestions for them?
The same things, because they still have bile. It's just that the bile got very thick, so they took out the gallbladder, but the bile's still thick. Everyone I see who had the gallbladder removed, we still have to use the triphala and the beets and the warm water to get things moving. Yeah.
Okay. And someone else was asking, they use hot water only for all their herbs. Is that a good idea, or do you have other suggestions?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. And did I ask you good bacteria without dairy if someone's a vegan? If do you have any options for them?
This company makes dairy-free probiotics too.
Okay.
I would not recommend they be a vegan, though. I have to be honest with you. This is coming from, my teacher was a strict vegetarian. The whole lineage of Ayurveda were always vegetarians. There has never been a vegan diet in the history of mankind. This is just a new construct. It sounds good in theory, but if you don't want to kill the animals and all those issues with the animals, you seek out the dairies that have, maybe the owners took laws of nonviolence and ahimsa. We're using those dairies. We're not using the mass dairies. So there's a lot of issues that we need to look at with milk. But by avoiding milk, they're going to run into trouble. Sometimes you can last a long time without the B12, the iron, but at some point the stores are going to run out and the tissues are going to get very depleted.
Yes.
And yeah, so.
And I remember you saying earlier, and I believe what you just said, that you need to know how to drink milk. You don't take it cold out of the fridge, right?
No, that'll make ama, right? Then you'll get infection. So on my website, I would invite anyone. These are free classes. There's 10 hours worth of classes. If you look on my website, it'll say online classes. Click on that link and these 10 classes will come up and you're welcome to listen to them. One of them will be an hour-long lecture on milk and how to take it in the correct way. Shouldn't be homogenized and, you know, with spices to you like that. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, your talk is amazing. And
well,
you're welcome to come back anytime we can have you. And I know you were going to come to our conference, and when we have it, I hope you can still make it to our conference in Canada.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I would love to.
Welcome.
Okay.
So I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions. If you have a question, one at a time, if you could just unmute yourself. And when you're finished asking your question, if you could mute yourself again, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Teitelbaum. I have a quick question. It's about nature and probiotics, which I know are excellent. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I found that they are affected during delivery, and I was wondering if there is a simple way that we could check at home to see if they're still active or not, because sometimes I find out the hard way.
If what are active, the probiotic?
Yeah, sometimes I'll take it for a week and then I realize, uh-oh, something must have happened, you know, on the way, or maybe it was warm or it's expired, and then it just doesn't work.
No, if you keep them refrigerated, they should work. We've had people even not refrigerate them, they didn't know, and they still worked. I haven't seen cases where they didn't work. So. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You mentioned a microscope, but that, I guess that was more of a lab setting.
Yeah. I attended a seminar and they wheeled in a very, very expensive microscope. I think it was like $65,000. And that's where they were putting the probiotics under this microscope, and he could put it up on a screen so we could see how active it was. There was no activity in any of the cultures except that one, the natron.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I hope this isn't too personal, a specific question for the group, but my daughter has celiac disease, mm-hmm. and I wondered if there's anything that you would recommend so it's easier for her to absorb nutrients, etc. I mean, in addition to.
So celiac is one of those where she needs to, she'll always be allergic to glutens. Yeah. See, a lot of my patients, if they don't have celiac, I could fix their gluten sensitivity, but that's different where the villi have been damaged like that. But she still needs to reculture the gut with friendly bacteria. The other thing is that the same thing with celiac. I never heard of that so much in my early years of practice, and now it's an epidemic. So it leads me to believe that, I know they're saying it's genetic and all that, but if it's genetic, then why are the cases increasing with so many vaccinations, antibiotics, flu shot? You see what I'm saying? So
yeah, nobody else in the family's ever had it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I don't believe that it's genetic, but so she still needs to fix the liver, the gut, so she can still digest the food better, even though now we can't go back and fix those intestinal villi, see? Mm-hmm.
So just in general, probiotic would be your recommendation? That's
too general to say. Like in a case like her, she needs a lot of specific, like attention. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. When you say you need to fix the friendly bacteria, the liver, the gallbladder, bone marrow, is it one step at a time? Like you start with the friendly bacteria, or can you work on?
No, I do everything at once.
Everything at once.
I don't want to wait around here because each thing takes a long time to fix. So we just start out and then.
And I think you might want to see if you can find a practitioner in your area to work with, if you're comfortable with that.
I also do phone consultations. I have a lot of patients in Canada because lots of, well, you can look for people who might know how to do this. It's hard to find, I'll put it that way.
Can I ask you where you stand on drinking coffee or black tea, chai?
I was just telling a patient this today that addictions are hard to break. So my rule of thumb is don't take anything in that's addicting, because sooner or later you're going to get addicted to the coffee or to the chai, and Dr. Mishra was, and it's very hard to break these habits. So the better thing is don't even take them in if you're not real, if you can do it. For myself, I drink spring water all day because my kidneys need to be flushed all day, you know, but if you can, if you're not an addictive type and you can handle just 1 cup of coffee a day or a chai, then you can do it. But you have to be careful you don't get addicted to it, because the coffee creates acidity. They all have issues. There's certain things in the tea, the tannic acid, that leach the magnesium out of the blood, and you know, so why go there if you don't need to?
I need to.
Oh, that just limit
I
it.
drank many cups of chai with Vaija.
Yeah, he got everybody addicted, but he never got me addicted. See, that's not a Vedic thing. That was from the British invading. They brought the tea. So that was the one thing he did that wasn't Vedic, you know? And I think it was a little too much.
That's
I
why.
have a question about sunscreen. If you're a person who spends a lot of time in the sun, is sunscreen harmful to your skin or your body?
It is, but you have to outweigh the risks and the benefits. So like I go down to, we call it the shore here in New Jersey, because we're close to the beach a lot. But I never use sunscreen, but I do sit under an umbrella all day. Now, if you're going to be in the sun and you're going to be out all day, you're going to have to find a sunscreen that has less toxicity. But you do want some time in the sun without the sunscreen on, because all these wonderful things that happen when the sun hits your skin with the T cells and the vitamin D and many others, which we haven't discovered yet, won't happen if you have sunscreen on. So do that too.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Welcome.
I have a
Hi.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just Neelam, you go ahead first, please.
Yeah.
No,
Hi.
I just saw Melina Mishra, and I wanted to thank her for attending our session. I was a big fan of Vaidya Mishra, and thank you, Melina, on behalf of AAC. Namaste.
Hi, Melina. I miss you.
I'm not sure how much time we're going to continue.
Neelam, there's a lady named Neelam that had a question. Do you have a question?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Not you, Neelam.
Okay.
We are both twins. Don't worry.
There we go.
We are twins. First of all, thank you so much, everyone. You are upgrading our knowledge in a situation like this, and I'm so much grateful for this webinar today. I have a deep knowledge of Ayurveda, but I'm just thinking where we can relate the 3 doshas with COVID-19. You know, like if we can find out the root of the, of the person, like where he's lacking his 3 doshas. So where do you think we can see and we can relate with COVID-19? Like who can get more severe? Which doshas can get more severe? Because all human body is different.
I don't know if you can look at it like that. I look at it like if we could keep our ojas up, our friendly bacteria intact, the liver, the bone marrow, all the things I was saying, have a healthy diet, early bedtime, get out in the sun, that the virus, you can see a whole range of responses. So many people are getting it, but some of them have no symptoms. Some have mild symptoms. Others get severe and others die. like they're drowning. So, and it's the same virus, but what it is, it's how much your body can thwart the virus, see? So if you can do all these things, you'll have a better chance at thwarting it. I don't think we can say if you keep your Vata balanced, but this is all part of what we're doing. We're keeping Vata, Pitta, and Kapha balanced. See what I'm saying? But that's not the only thing either. And I don't think we can say, oh yeah, it's affecting the Pittas more, but not the Kaphas. I don't think it works that way.
That's why I'm thinking from that point of view. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I see that Rini had a question. Could you?
Yeah, I was just wondering how you feel about, they're saying they're trying to develop a vaccine for this. Normally, I don't take vaccines, but in this case, I'm wondering if that might be a time to break my rule.
Well, yeah, you'll have to see. Keep a close eye on it. First, they're telling you that vaccines take many years to develop. They're going to develop this in a year and a half. So they're rushing it to market. So we have to be careful. I also read that there are other coronaviruses out there, and they have tried to make vaccines, but whenever they do, it damages the lungs. So why would this be any different? The other thing is, what if this virus mutates? See, like the flu. Most people I see who get the flu shot, it's not helping at all. And in fact, they tend to get the flu after the flu shot. That's what I most commonly see. Not to mention all the other things that happen, autoimmune diseases and other, after the flu shot. So what about this virus? If it's going to take a year and a half to make, won't it be a different virus by next year? And then we're going to run all these risks of taking something that could be potentially dangerous for no good reason. That's why I don't get flu shots too. See, well, there's other reasons, but they miss it every year. By the time the flu shot comes out, it's mutated and it's no longer effective. Otherwise, people are still dying of the flu and they have the vaccine, not helping. So I don't have any great hopes for this vaccine, but hey, what do I know? If they manage to do it right and they have this wonderful vaccine, that would be great. If they could wipe it out, I'm all for it. But we have to be careful going into it. We'll have to wait and see what happens.
Thank you.
What I'm hoping for, if I were to catch this virus, I'm doing all these things that I'm telling you to do to prevent it. But if I did, I would ask them to give me that serum from people who've already been infected. So see what I'm saying? Like they have antibodies. Then you can use their antibodies to fight it. I think that's the way to go because that's natural. It came from someone's blood. The vaccine, they're making it in a lab. It's always going to have some side effect because there's no prana there. And just like with the flu, they have a medicine called Tamiflu. And the people I see that take, because they think, oh, well, we have a vaccine for the flu, we have Tamiflu, we'll be okay. But the kids don't do well when they take that. Some of them get very sick, just like they're saying hydroxychloroquine and all these, they have side effects. So we have to be careful when it comes to talking about these antiviral drugs and the vaccines. We'll just have to watch it. But you do what makes you feel most comfortable. If you feel you want the vaccine and you're a pretty sturdy person that could handle it, then you can try it, but see what you think. For myself, I know I couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
I'm so sensitive.
I already know I'm
Advil, and I'm like, oh my God, I just took an Advil. So,
Yeah, I'm pretty sensitive. I never get a flu shot.
I think Sushila is waiting to speak. Sushila?
Okay. Who is?
Great. Well, thank you very much. This was. Hello?
She's trying to speak, but I don't know why we can't see. We can't hear her.
I think we're out of time. That was to be the last question.
Okay.
So that was an amazing presentation, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marianne.
What I see is that, Ayurveda is such an amazing natural science that all the things that you've been talking about, if we keep the host healthy physically, mentally, and spiritually, in the long run, our bodies will know how to take care of most things. I mean, I think we all need to be careful, but Ayurveda is a pretty amazing science in a multifaceted discipline. And I think Marianne did a great job of explaining that to all of us. I'd like to let you know that we will have this video available on the Ayurvedic Association of Canada website. And so hopefully within the next 10 days, it'll be loaded on there, but I can't say for sure. I don't do that personally. But you're welcome to come back to our site. There's already other videos on there, and have a look for the first of our webinar series. And please stay in touch with us on Facebook and Instagram to be ready for our next seminar, which will be on April 30th. So thank you very much. And everyone, have a great evening, and thank you for joining us. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Namaste.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You're welcome. It was amazing.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.